Bacon, Shakespeare, and the Rosicrucians. The present consideration of the Bacon, Shakespeare, Rosicrucian controversy is undertaken not for the vain purpose of digging up dead men's bones but rather in the hope that a critical analysis will aid in the rediscovery of that knowledge lost to the world since the oracles were silenced. It was W.F.C. Wigston who called the Bard of Avon Phantom Captain Shakespeare, the Rosicrucian Mask. This constitutes one of the most significant statements relating to the Bacon-Shakespeare controversy. It is quite evident that William Shakespeare could not, unaided, have produced the immortal writings bearing his name. He did not possess the necessary literary culture, for the town of Stratford where he was reared contained no school capable of imparting the higher forms of learning reflected in the writings ascribed to him. His parents were illiterate, and in his early life he evinced a total disregard for study. There are in existence but 6 known examples of Shakespeare's handwriting. All are signatures, and 3 of them are in his will. The scrawling, uncertain method of their execution stamps Shakespeare as unfamiliar with the use of a pen, and it is obvious either that he copied a signature prepared for him or that his hand was guided while he wrote. No autograph manuscripts of the Shakespearean plays or sonnets have been discovered, nor is there even a tradition concerning them other than the fantastic and impossible statement appearing in the foreword of the Great Folio. A well-stocked library would be an essential part of the equipment of an author whose literary productions demonstrate him to be familiar with the literature of all ages, yet there is no record that Shakespeare ever possessed a library, nor does he make any mention of books in his will. Commenting on the known illiteracy of Shakespeare's daughter Judith, who at 27 could only make her mark, Ignatius Donnelly declares it to be unbelievable that William Shakespeare, if he wrote the plays bearing his name, would have permitted his own daughter to reach womanhood and marry without being able to read one line of the writings that made her father wealthy and locally famous. The query also has been raised, where did William Shakespeare secure his knowledge of modern French, Italian, Spanish, and Danish, to say nothing of classical Latin and Greek? For, in spite of the rare discrimination with which Latin is used by the author of the Shakespearean plays, Ben Jonson, who knew Shakespeare intimately, declared that the Stratford actor understood small Latin and less Greek. Is it not also more than strange that no record exists of William Shakespeare's having ever played a leading role in the famous dramas he is supposed to have written or in others produced by the company of which he was a member? True, he may have owned a small interest in the Globe Theatre or Blackfriars, but apparently the height of his thespian achievements was the Ghost in Hamlet. In spite of his admitted avarice, Shakespeare seemingly made no effort during his lifetime to control or secure remuneration from the plays bearing his name, many of which were first published anonymously. As far as can be ascertained, none of his heirs were involved in any manner whatsoever in the printing of the first folio after his death, nor did they benefit financially therefrom. Had he been their author, Shakespeare's manuscripts and unpublished plays would certainly have constituted his most valued possessions, yet his will, while making special disposition of his second-best bed and his broad silver gilt bowl, neither mentions nor intimates that he possessed any literary productions whatsoever. While the folios and quartos usually are signed William Shakespeare, all the known autographs of the Stratford actor read William Shakespeare. Does this change in spelling contain any significance heretofore generally overlooked? Furthermore, if the publishers of the first Shakespearean folio revered their fellow actor as much as their claims in that volume would indicate, why did they, as if in ironical allusion to a hoax which they were perpetrating, place an evident caricature of him on the title page? Certain absurdities also in Shakespeare's private life are irreconcilable. While supposedly at the zenith of his literary career, he was actually engaged in buying malt, presumably for a brewing business. Also picture the immortal Shakespeare, the reputed author of The Merchant of Venice, as a money-lender. Yet among those against whom Shakespeare brought action to collect petty sums was a fellow townsman, one Philip Rogers, whom he sued for an unpaid loan of 2 shillings, or about 48 cents. In short, there is nothing known in the life of Shakespeare that would justify the literary excellence imputed to him. The philosophic ideals promulgated throughout the Shakespearean plays distinctly demonstrate their author to have been thoroughly familiar with certain doctrines and tenets peculiar to Rosicrucianism. In fact, the profundity of the Shakespearean production stamps their creator as one of the Illuminati of the ages. Most of those seeking a solution for the Bacon-Shakespeare controversy have been intellectualists. Notwithstanding their scholarly attainments, they have overlooked the important part played by transcendentalism in the philosophic achievements of the ages. The mysteries of superphysics are inexplicable to the materialist, whose training does not equip him to estimate the extent of their ramifications and complexities. Yet who but a Platonist, a Kabbalist, or a Pythagorean could have written The Tempest, Macbeth, Hamlet, or the tragedy of Cymbeline? Who but one deeply versed in Paracelsian lore could have conceived A Midsummer Night's Dream? 2 inserts. Headpiece showing light and shaded A's. From Shakespeare's King Richard II, Quarto 1597. The ornamental headpiece shown above has long been considered a Baconian or Rosicrucian signature. The light and the dark A's appear in several volumes published by emissaries of the Rosicrucians. If the above figure be compared with that from the Alciati emblemata on the following pages, the cryptic use of the 2 A's will be further demonstrated. The title page of Burton's Anatomy of Melancholy. From Burton's Anatomy of Melancholy. Baconian experts declare Burton's Anatomy of Melancholy to be in reality Francis Bacon's scrapbook in which he gathered strange and rare bits of knowledge during the many years of eventful life. This title page has long been supposed to contain a cryptic message. The key to this cipher is the pointing figure of the maniac in the lower right-hand corner of the design. According to Mrs. Elizabeth Wells Gallup, the celestial globe at which the maniac is pointing is a cryptic symbol of Sir Francis Bacon. The planetary signs which appear in the clouds opposite the marginal figures 4, 5, 6, and 7 signify the planetary configurations, which produce the forms of mania depicted. The seated man, with his head resting upon his hand, is declared by Baconian enthusiasts to represent Sir Francis Bacon. Continued. Father of modern science, remodeler of modern law, editor of the Modem Bible, patron of modem democracy, and one of the founders of modern Freemasonry, Sir Francis Bacon was a man of many aims and purposes. He was a Rosicrucian. Some have intimated the Rosicrucian. If not actually the illustrious Father CRC referred to in the Rosicrucian manifestos, he was certainly a high initiate of the Rosicrucian order, and it is his activities in connection with this secret body that are of prime importance to students of symbolism, philosophy, and literature. Scores of volumes have been written to establish Sir Francis Bacon as the real author of the plays and sonnets popularly ascribed to William Shakespeare. Unimpartial consideration of these documents cannot but convince the open-minded of the verisimilitude of the Baconian theory. In fact, those enthusiasts who for years have struggled to identify Sir Francis Bacon as the true bard of Avon might long since have won their case had they emphasized its most important angle, namely, that Sir Francis Bacon, the Rosicrucian initiate, wrote into the Shakespearean plays the secret teachings of the Fraternity of Arcee and the true rituals of the Freemasonic order, of which order it may yet be discovered that he was the actual founder. A sentimental world, however, dislikes to give up a traditional hero, either to solve a controversy or to right a wrong. Nevertheless, if it can be proved that by raveling out the riddle there can be discovered information of practical value to mankind, then the best minds of the world will cooperate in the enterprise. The Bacon-Shakespeare controversy, as its most able advocates realize, involves the most profound aspects of science, religion, and ethics. He who solves its mystery may yet find therein the key to the supposedly lost wisdom of antiquity. It was in recognition of Bacon's intellectual accomplishments that King James turned over to him the translator's manuscripts of what is now known as the King James Bible for the presumable purpose of checking, editing, and revising them. The documents remained in his hands for nearly a year, but no information is to be had concerning what occurred in that time. Regarding this work, William T. Smedley writes, "It will eventually be proved that the whole scheme of the authorist version of the Bible was Francis Bacon's." See The Mystery of Francis Bacon. The first edition of the King James Bible contains a cryptic Baconian headpiece. Did Bacon cryptographically conceal in the authorized Bible that which he dared not literally reveal in the text, the secret Rosicrucian key to mystic and Masonic Christianity? Sir Francis Bacon unquestionably possessed